Welcome back to my channel. Today I have a very, very special guest, Veronica Marin, and I have to say it with a Spanish accent because if I say it with an English accent, it just doesn't have the twang. So Veronica is a psychologist. She is a professor at the University of Guadalajara and a human rights activist and someone that I consider to be one of my closest friends. Hello, welcome to my channel.
Hello, dear Francis. I'm so excited to be here with you today. I'm a big fan of yours, as you know. So this is a great honor.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming. So Veronica was somebody that I came into contact with when I was searching for therapy. And it was actually, I don't know if I actually explained the story to you, Veronica, but I was talking with another psychologist trying to organize a time, and one of my friends at the time, he worked in the field of psychology, and he said, actually, I have one of my teachers who knows you, Veronica, and maybe that would be a good option. So I contacted you, and then it was immediate. We had our first session and then went off from there.
Yeah, no, I didn't know that it was like that we met. I'm very happy and thankful for those people for telling you this.
For people who maybe this is your first video with me, I used to be a Catholic priest, and then they sent me to my first church here in Guadalajara, and that was about 5 years ago. And I left, and you can watch all of my other videos where I explain exactly what happened. But I was searching for help. I was searching for psychological help, not because I thought that I was, going crazy like a lot of people think. That's the moment when you start looking, but because I had reached the capacity, my own limits to deal with my situation, and so that's when I reached out. Since leaving, all the people that I've come into contact with, it seems like it was the perfect person for that moment. Like it wasn't just a coincidence. Like there was some reason why we came into contact. So we started our therapy sessions, and don't worry, viewers, this isn't like a public therapy session where we're going to talk about me. But we started doing that, and I realized very quickly the importance of going to therapy, especially with people who are maybe going through a crisis of identity. Maybe they're part of some sort of religious structure, and it's hard for them to understand exactly who they are in relation to that structure, and all the different aspects of that. And that was something that I was dealing with. So I wanted to invite you to just kind of enlighten everyone a little bit more into some of the elements that we can think about, and kind of the way to approach this subject for someone who is in religion and maybe beginning to try to understand themselves. What are some things that we can
start thinking of?
Yeah.
Well, the thing is that obviously your particular story is not a very common one, right? Like a priest that starts doubting if that is really the place where he belongs, if everything he believes is true or not, if it's wrong to be who you are, if then it means you don't fit there. If you don't fit, then you can't believe what you believe. It's a very peculiar story, but it's not very different from what happens to people that are searching for their truth, searching for what it means to be themselves, right? So first we should, I think, start by thinking of how it is that we come to believe what we believe.
Mm.
And in order to know those things, last century, in mid-century, psychology started to be like an important field that people started to look into and really take interest on.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, there were some experiments conducted to understand, for example, why it was that people will confirm, why it was that people will do the things that they did, even if they knew they weren't right. And we had, for example, let's think of Ash's experiment, for example. Ash, 1950, he took a group of people and they were all male students, and he will ask them to come to an experiment to test their visual capacity. So he will have these boards with lines, and they were of different lengths. And he will ask, okay, so this is the one that you have to compare with the other three. Which one is the same as this one?
Mm-hmm.
And it was very obvious that, for example, the answer was B, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he will have some stooges or confederates in their room and ask them to say the wrong answer. So they will agree in advance to say the wrong answer. So the professor was in front of the group and said, okay, so here's this one. Tell me which one is wrong. Which one is the same?
Mm-hmm.
And people will say B, B, B. And the guy was like, what? No, it's A. What's going on?
So he had the people first
Lie.
who gave the wrong answer.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And they were like Confederates. They were with him in the experiment. Yeah. And there was just one innocent person not knowing what's going on.
Poor guy.
And there
lab
are
rat.
Ethical issues now that we will have to discuss.
That's another topic.
At that point, we were just exploring what was happening, right?
Yeah.
And sure enough, about 75% of the time, people will say the wrong answer.
Just to feel like they belong with the other ones.
That's the first thing that they figure out, that it was a normative influence. They wanted to fit in with the group, for sure. That was a very, very big factor. But also they did very many different variations of the experiment, in which they will have people, for example, not say their answers, but write it down, for example, or they will have someone else in the room say the right answer, and that will change completely everything. So that way they were able to say, okay, so this is normative influence, but also there's another kind of influence, which is this one in which we believe that we don't know enough, and maybe the group is better informed than we are. So if everybody is seeing it that way, they might know better than me. So I will just say what they're saying, so that I'm not the one that is wrong,
because they think that maybe it's safer for them to depend on the intelligence or the perceived intelligence of someone else rather than their own intelligence.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's very interesting, because the first thing is, like, obviously to fit in, you can do several things, right? But when you doubt yourself and you're like, oh, well, there might be something wrong with me. They're testing visual capacity. Maybe my visual capacity is not as good, and that is complicated to deal with. So along came Alpert. After Ash, we had Alpert doing some other experiments to check on what was it that people were taking as the parameters for their own behaviors or their own attitudes or their own beliefs. And then we had Festinger. Festinger did something very, very, very interesting. He asked people to come and do and participate in an experiment that was so extremely boring. They had like 100 knobs, and they had to turn each knob to the left. And they tricked them to believe that it was an experiment about learning capacities. And people were like, God, this is so
Yeah.
bad, But at the end, there were two different conditions. And for some of them, they were like, you know what? I'll give you $20 if you help me convince others that this is not as bad, because we really need more subjects to run the experiment. And people are like learning that this is very bad. So could you help us? And people will be like, okay, yeah, I can do that. But there were other people that they will offer $1. And they will be like, okay, so could you please help us convince people? We can give you $1 to help explain the experiment and let them know that, it's not as bad. And the thing is that he figured out that there is something called cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is this phenomenon in which you start doubting. You start doubting what you know, what you believe, what you the sense of truth that you have about things, and it makes us feel very uncomfortable, to the point in which we can convince ourselves of something that is not true in order to talk to others about it. So what happened is that those that had been paid $20 were like, when interviewed afterwards, they asked them, so did you think it was boring? And they were like, oh, boring as hell. I will never do it again, But for those people that were paid $1, which means they really did it because they wanted it, and not because they had to, they had any recompense. They persuade themselves. They convince themselves that it wasn't boring. So in the interviews, they asked them, so did you think it was boring? No, not at all. Would you do it again? Of course, absolutely. It's not that bad.
There's so many things to take out of that.
I know, right? But after learning about cognitive dissonance that Festinger puts out there, we learned that inconsistency in our thoughts, in our beliefs, in our attitudes, in our behaviors, or any combination of the above, causes even like pain, like a big discomfort. And we try to do something about it, because we can't hold two thoughts that are competing against each other. We need to somehow equalize that to regain calm.
So cognitive dissonance is like my human experience tells me one thing, but I almost convince myself that experience, my personal experience, isn't really what I experience. So it's like almost like you're living on two different planes, and you have to like separate them into boxes, and
we can't do that. We can't we can't live with those two things. It's, for example, if you say eating fried chicken every day, it's a very bad idea. I love fried chicken. So what am I going to do with those two things, right? Like, I know like high cholesterol and like high blood pressure will come from that. And maybe I will develop some other diseases. It's a bad idea, but it's so good. So your behavior, your attitude, your beliefs are in competing against each other, right? So you have many different options on what to do with that. Humans are addicted to certainty, to security, so we can be dancing among these two options. No, we need to do something. So you can actually change your thought. Just change one of those thoughts and say, well, actually, no, it's not that bad for your health. It's just, it has a high content of proteins and vitamins, so it can
so
be
you
that
change the perspective in order to make them possible to coexist.
Exactly, that's one option. Another option is, for example, changing your behavior. You stop eating fried chicken. You won't do that anymore,
Right.
But that's hard. Changing one's behavior, that's very complicated. So
well, maybe for fried chicken it's easier, but in other situations it's
think smoking, or think living with someone that is abusive, or think living in a place where they make you feel all the time like you are wrong, or where they're hostile to you, you think, I can't be here. And on the other side, you think, I must stay here. There's nothing else I can do, or I need to go through this because it's God's will, for example, right? So it's like, how can you make things really align for you to be comfortable? Well, another thing that you can do is add a third thought. For example, in the case of someone that is living in a violent relationship, for example, they believe he's abusive. They believe they love them. And it's like, how can I love someone that I'm abusing, that it's abusing me? But then there's another thought, for example, well, I have to be here for the sake of my kids. And that way you can like level those things up and convince yourself that there's a reason why you're doing what you're doing.
And you're not saying any of those options are necessarily good or bad. You're just saying that those are different coping mechanisms when you're dealing with those two conflicting thoughts.
Yeah, we've learned that those are responses that humans give to these cognitive dissonance. It's not like it's not like you can choose either, and that you can, like, we all know our repertoire and we just say, oh, today is number one. It's not like that.
Yeah,
we've learned that this is how it happens. The other thing is that you can just trivialize the inconsistency of your thoughts and say, well, I simply don't care.
That's one subject that I think is something I want to talk about later, definitely, because of the response of people who maybe decide to leave religion, and then how they treat their religious past in order to kind of push down maybe any thoughts of guilt or any sort of emotions from their past, in order to put it in a box and put it aside, is to trivialize it and to condemn it as something stupid. And that's such a common response that happens, because apparently it seems easier to just do that. So we're talking about cognitive dissonance. Now, when we apply this into religion, obviously there's people who are religious and who are honest, and everything fits together. I mean, no one has a perfect life, so there's always complications, but there's a harmony between religion, their life, their thoughts, and it fits well into that system, and there's no cognitive dissonance in there.
Yeah, and you know what? There's a very important element there that we always take into account, which is how much you know that you do have a choice, but you choose this life. Sometimes when people don't think there's a choice, they don't have any kind of cognitive dissonance, because there's no choice. This is just the way things have to be done, and that's it. We don't question anything. We don't have a problem.
From my past, I had that perspective where, like, obviously there's other options, but they're all bad. There's no other option. There's no other real option. And even when I was deciding to go to the seminary, my options at that point were, I wasn't going to get married because I didn't want to pretend to be in a relationship with a girl. I just wasn't going to play that game. I've seen it actually play out afterwards, and how horrible it ends up when a homosexual in that type of environment conforms to a more heterosexual structure. My only real options were to be single, and then therefore a failure in a certain sense, because that's not a real option. That's like a tolerated option, or religion. So looking back, I see that my path wasn't really, there wasn't a lot of variation involved. It has to be this or what. It has to be this or what. Okay, this worked. Okay, now to the next one now. And I think in that in that environment, I was able to kind of rest easy in that structure because there was no other possibility.
Right, right. And the thing is that there's always another possibility, but we make ourselves believe that there isn't. And that way we can be calm, we can be at peace until the alternative, it's unbearable because you know that that's the alternative, the choice that you want to make. But there are many mechanisms inside a religious institution that prevent us from entertaining these alternatives in our lives. And one of them is to make us know that we are part of the in group. And if you're not in the in group, you will have very negative consequences. And not only that, but we like to think of ourselves as stable, smart, intelligent. We like to have a positive image of ourselves, and the in group gives it to us. If we, go away from that, we will lose that, and then we might start thinking of us as not that reasonable, not that moral, not that smart, and that
Well, it's interesting because it's not like, I mean, obviously there's doctrine that talks specifically about people who are the others, who are outside of the community. But even there's like a subtle, like implied doctrine when you just see how the community treats people who have left. It's almost like I had a conversation with someone the other day about the death penalty, and one of the arguments was when you see the death penalty, it's like a deterrent, because when you see someone have that type of consequence for their action, you think, well, I'm never going to do that, whatever.
Yeah.
Not talking about the morality, but just that those type of actions teach the people who may commit those actions in the future. So in the religious community, you see how they talk about the others, and you think, oh, well, even if it's implied, it's not a positive thought. It's just implied, like, that's never going to be me.
Absolutely. And it's the out group,
Yeah.
and in the out group, people are not, well, they're not us, and we are slightly superior to others in whichever way you want to put it. Even when it comes to football teams, or like soccer or whatever, like us, the ones that root for, I don't know, whatever, the Rockets or whatever, are obviously a little better than those that root for the Bears, obviously, right? Because we are more that or that, or they are that or that other thing, And well, obviously, as humans, social beings, we crave for approval, and we crave for belonging, and we crave for others, just being in contact.
Where does that come from? Where does this, I was taught in looking at natural philosophy that human beings are individual by nature, but also social. So you can't just be one or the other. There's a combination of both. And it's just looking at the nature of man that you see that man cannot live on his own. Like he needs, and even just looking at infants, when a child is born, it needs the mother. At least it needs a society, even if the society is just two. So
a caretaker, because we are very immature when we are born.
Yeah.
Very immature. Some of the most immature creatures in
right.
nature.
Some animals get up and walk, and they have to, or they'll get eaten.
Absolutely. And they can start eating right away, like the grass or whatever around, and we cannot do that. We are just, exactly, we are limited to whatever it's given to us for the first few years of our life.
And we depend on others.
Absolutely. So there's absolutely no way that you will survive on your own. And in order to be taken care of, you also need to give something.
Mm.
of what you have.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that means obedience. And for example, in the 50s, that was a huge value. Let's just remember where we were in historical terms, after Second World War, and how there was this Cold War and all that stuff. And you needed to be recognized as part of the group. So obedience was very important.
You had
But
to
there
make
has
clear
been,
lines.
oh yes, where you belong and where you would align, at some point when forced to, where are you going to stay? Where are you going to say you're going? Who's your group? And thankfully, there has been a very, very big cultural change, because let's remember that when these experiments were done, they were done again with mainly men, middle-aged men, white men, that were students, and their role was to be obedient. They were silent receptors. At that point, still going to college was a matter of taking notes and being respectful and never question anything. But not only did that change for those people, students, males, middle-aged or young, but also now for lesbian people, women, gay people, young people, children. We've gained a voice of our own, and obedience is not the most valued trait in our personalities. There are others.
Well, it's not only obedience. This is something that I've heard people talk about, because they say obedience, but what they mean is blind obedience.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
It means obedience that you don't think about why you're doing it. You don't try to understand why, you just do it. And that's blind obedience. If you look at obedience, the definition, it actually talks about the conforming of two wills into one. And it's almost, I mean, when you have something like a family, there is a obedience that is necessary in order to unite the family, and to, I mean, you have the parents and the children, there's an obedience that's expected. It's not like, they're animals or something, there's there, you want to give them an understanding when you have when you tell them what to do. It's not just blah, 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 do this, and it's I have to do this. No, it's a way of guiding somebody. It's not like a slave or something like that. So
yeah.
So I think that's an important distinction to have, because if you don't have any sort of obedience, then people just go off in all sorts of directions, and there's not any sort of unity like a society.
Then I think we should also talk about how, for example, Milgram's experiment, or Zimbardo's experiment, how people will blindly obey whatever role they were given or whatever instruction they were given. Milgram, with the experiment in which he, remember, people will electrocute others.
Oh yeah, I did hear about that. Yes.
And Zimbardo, that told them, okay, so you are a prisoner, you are a police, a guard, and they will just fall right into it, right? And we need then to talk about authority and how authority was thought of before, and what is it like to think of authority now? Before, it was because he is your superior. Because I'm sorry, my cat is.
It's okay, the tail. Welcome to the stream.
So when we think about authority, we need to think of how it was before, that we were not supposed to question anything. It was said by the professor, priest, major, president, whatever.
Father.
And we will have to follow through with whatever it was.
Yeah.
But now, and just building a little bit on what you were saying before, we have the ability to negotiate, to discuss things, to have a point of view, or at least they tell us we can, right?
Mhm.
Because we live in a democracy, because we blah blah blah. So that really led for change culturally in a very, very big way that wasn't expected so quickly. And when it comes to um, taking into account what others need, desire, or the guidance of someone, now it's because we attribute them with some knowledge we don't have, with some experiences that we don't have,
Mhm.
with some I don't know, qualities that are important for us that we observe in that person and we aspire to have.
Mhm.
So there's respect now, not fear.
Mhm.
And it used to be based on fear.
Mhm.
You're going to go to hell, or you're going to be killed, by death penalty, or you're going to be expelled, or you're going to. And now it's like we can discuss what are the values that we need to have in order to survive as a group, in order to have a society, as you just said, um, in order to guarantee that we all have a dignified way of living.
Yeah.
But that's new.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm thinking as you're talking about somebody in religion. I know that a lot of times on my channel I'm talking about religion just because it's my experience and
Of
everything,
course.
but any of these any of these comments can be applied across the field. It's not necessarily in a religious structure, but also any sort of political, social, any sort of structure, you're going to find these same elements because you're dealing with people.
That's true.
um, but let's hone in on religion specifically, just to give context to the ideas, but always try to draw the general principles from all of these comments and see how they apply in all the different sectors.
Mhm.
So for somebody in religion, there's let's give a situation of somebody who they grew up, they were born into a religion, and they have their whole life through their teenage, their young adult life in a religion, and believing that this is their existence. They've accepted it. They're an adult now. They've matured mentally, so they're living that life. Okay, so before we talk about the obstacles or the problems that might come, what's happening psychologically in someone who is living in that type of structure?
Mhm. Well, we are learning the model of what's good and what's bad. We are adopting it as our own,
Mhm.
as if we had been the ones creating it,
Right,
as,
exactly,
as
exactly.
if everything was perfectly clear.
Hmm.
But there's
There's like
no.
a integration of the doctrine and our life.
Right,
It's become
absolutely.
one.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we're content with that. We think, oh, everything is so easy. There's an answer for everything.
Hmm.
This is so nice.
Hmm.
I can live my life just by learning and following the guidelines that I have been given.
Hmm.
Perfect. This is great. And they are great for a very long time. And for some people, for their whole lives.
Hmm.
But there are times when,
But
yeah,
so what happens when everything's smooth sailing and then you hit your first
doubt,
iceberg?
right?
There's a doubt, there's some sort of conflicting thought. What's
Absolutely.
happening? What happens there?
Exactly what we were discussing before with the cognitive dissonance. That's exactly what will happen. You will be afraid, scared, confused, feeling like you're lost. What's going on? This is not expected at all. How can I be sure that everything is the way they told me and then feel something that is not supposed to be felt? But I feel it. It's real. It's my experience. Come on, nobody can deny this is real, but it's not supposed to be. So you will resort to one of the four strategies that we discussed earlier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for example, there's, if you're a young adult and you've had your whole life in a religion, there's a lot of momentum behind you. It's not just like you decided today to be religious, and there's years and you've trained yourself in little details how to think. Like there's little obstacles that you've had to come over, and you've taken the doctrine and the belief system and said, okay, when this happens, I have to do this. For example, when talking about doubts about the faith in Catholicism, there's a method. First of all, you're not supposed to dwell on the thoughts too much, because if the faith is real, then any sort of thought against the faith is a temptation. But what they say, because that's not everything they say. One thing I just as a side note, Catholicism, I think in a lot of ways bases their doctrines on logic as much as possible. There's a lot of logical structures that give our minds ease, like you were saying before.
That's why
it's not just emotional. Like there's a lot of religions that their foundations are based on emotions and your emotional response, and they always have to keep you high on emotions in order to keep you there. But Catholicism is a lot more cold. There's a lot more of that structure. So I know that whenever I had any doubts in the past, it was easy for me to find some sort of rational explanation for it. So just as a side, so you have the doubt and you're not supposed to think about it too much, but you should, if it's a real doubt, you should talk to a priest about it. You should, talk to the wise people of the parish about it. You should read accepted books to understand it. So there is it's not just cognitive dissonance, like black and white like that, where you just don't think about it. But there's a subtle cognitive dissonance where you go and talk to the wise people, the books, the gurus, the priests, in order to get the same information that's going to make you do the same thing, which is not think about it.
Influence. That's a big thing. And as we know now, there's people that can influence you in one way or the other. And obviously, those thoughts or attitudes that echo with you more closely will be welcome, and they will be able to influence you. So when you have a doubt, they know these things. They know these things. So it's like, before you go and look anything up on the internet or talk to someone that is like that deviant or weird or expelled from the order or something,
banished.
Banished, come to us, come back, and we will help you regain confidence in what you know it's true and good, and sanctified and sacred. So let's protect it together, and it works for a little while longer. It will hold you.
When you believe in the religion or that structure, everything makes sense, because it makes sense that you would go to the wise person with experience. I mean, if I had problems in my family, I would go to my parents, because it just makes sense. Like it's just a logical way of doing things. So when you're facing that type of structure, and anybody who's watched my other videos knows that I'm not bashing religions. I'm not here pointing the finger and saying they're horrible and manipulative and because I've known people, I see people who are very honest, very open, and they have very, very happy lives, and
Yeah.
they're not manipulated at all. That's just, they've accepted it and they believe it.
They can be extremely helpful for people that are struggling
Yeah.
for many other reasons. And it helps them change, and they help them find their truth. They help them like regain calm and peace, you know, and to find themselves in this state of well-being again.
Mm.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
And yeah, you're right. Thank you for pointing that out. It's not like, oh, everything is evil and it's
Well, I
just
know
to
you don't
keep you
think that.
there.
I
Yeah,
know.
I really don't think that. Um, but we need to think about people that can't find um peace there anymore, and that's valid too. And there is when it becomes a problem.
Right. Everything, I've said this too. Everything works when there's no deviation. Like if you're the ideal Christian, then being in Christianity just works. It just fits, you just fit right in. But some people, it just doesn't work. And then that's when things start falling apart.
And that doesn't make those people that don't fit in bad people. But that's when it becomes a problematic situation. When, in order to continue to protect the ones that fit right in, we banish everybody else. And not only that, but we say they are rotten or broken or lost.
And what's the reason for that? Why? I've so many people have come to me, privately messaged me and said they left religion for whatever reason. And for a lot of people, it's for a very honest reason. It wasn't, oh, I want to go do this now, or it seemed, at least from what they told me, it seemed very honest. And they're just completely shut off from their family and from their religious community. So why do religious people do that? Why is that necessary for them to do that?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. The thing is that, for example, let's think of my brother. Let's say I have a brother, and my brother decided to divorce, and that is a big no-no in my religious community. But he really was miserable, and actually, they all in that family were not having a very good time together. It really wasn't working, and they did everything. It was a long struggle, like a 10, 12, 15-year long struggle to come to terms with that as a choice. But then they are banished. They are like expelled. You can't be part of this anymore. We can't see you anymore. But we still love them. And that's very complex. Like, how can I not see my brother, not love my brother if I love him? He did something that we're not supposed to do, but I still love him. And there we have again two competing thoughts. Do I continue to love him because he really is a very good person that just made a choice that is not validated by our community? Or do I validate over the love I feel for him, the guidelines that I've been giving because if I don't do this, I will be offending someone in the community, and even God, maybe. I have to choose. What am I gonna do? And letting go.
And God trumps everyone. So
there you go. And letting go of my brother will be extremely painful, but we'll give the in-group, it will strengthen it.
So when you make big decisions like that, when you make things that are really hard to make and almost traumatic,
they are traumatic.
Does that solidify you more in
Yes.
your, okay.
Yes, because it's like we really are.
It's 100% or nothing.
Yeah, it's in and out, like we are completely in and to the end of it. Whatever happens, we will continue to be aligned with the beliefs that we have and that we hold to be true. Because if we don't, then everything starts falling apart.
Right. You can't go against one thing without starting the whole process.
Yeah. And how would it look like if you say, no, I will continue to come and I will, like follow with my ministry and I will do my work here, but I will just, like I will come to mass every day. I will fulfill my responsibilities, but I will go see my brother on Saturday because it's his birthday. It's like, whoa, you can't do that.
Yeah, I've known people that the parents don't go to their child's wedding because they're not being married inside the community. It almost seems like what I was saying before about the momentum and making the hard decisions. When you come face to face with those type of difficult obstacles where you have the two competing thoughts, it's almost like people make the decision immediately to do the right thing according to their religious belief, and then later they start like, was that the right decision? But they, like, in order to be safe, they just go with the same current, and that's, you see people being cut off completely from their family, and it seems very harsh and not like, take a second to think about this or let's talk about it. It's like, no, we can't do this. And
yeah, it's preservation mode, like,
yeah,
oh my God, no, this can't be happening. It's also denial, like, no. If anybody has to change their mind, it's you. You are the one that is wrong. You have to, think about this again and then come back and ask for forgiveness and make everything right again,
That's interesting.
But then it doesn't hold true for long. And they continue to love you, or like the one
it's
that
almost
was
like our human existence, our human experience can't coexist with those other systems in certain like we can't deny reality in those circumstances. I mean, we can, but it's like splitting someone in two physically.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I came across that where the last 6-7 months of before I left the priesthood, I was literally physically being ripped in two. That's what it felt like, because I was leading two lives, two different thoughts at the same time. It was an impossible situation and
unsustainable.
Yeah, it's just unsustainable. Exactly. Not unless you're, that there's you create some sort of mental instability, mental disorder because of.
Oh, yeah, you can't do that, and it's not what we want anyone to do,
Of course
right?
not.
In order to survive, we want people to be healthy. We want people to be happy. We want people to be
at peace internally.
Peace. Exactly.
Yeah.
But everyone involved.
Right.
Not only the one that was expelled, but also the ones that stayed. And that's hard because so many times they deny that there's a problem. It's like, no. The problem was the person that left.
Yeah.
And if that person is not here anymore, we don't have a problem anymore.
It's not why. Why did they leave? So now looking at the person who's leaving or who is in that direction, there's a momentum that's happening of doubts, and they're getting scared because they've lived in this structure of peace and harmony their whole life or however long it's been. And then things just start crumbling around them and it's like they're drowning and they're trying to breathe. Like what's happening there? Like explain that type of process and what someone should do.
Yeah, what happens is that you realize that you can change the structure of the institution, whichever this is. Well, it doesn't matter if we're talking about religion or any other one. But you realize that there are certain things that are inconsistent in the institution, not in you, but in the institution, because you can validate who you are because you are that person. There's nobody else telling you if it's right or wrong, if it's true or not. It's
Can you
true.
give us an example, like a concrete example?
Yeah, for example, being gay is a fantasy, is something that people construct, is just a matter of being influenced or tempted, but it's not real. It's not something real. There's no gay people.
It's not a lifestyle. It's
not
just
a
a temptation.
It's a temptation. But then you turn around and you're like, really? Because there's all these people living their lives in a very harmonic way, beautifully at peace, being great people, serving their communities, loving each other, like giving to others, like living in a very godly way, actually. And you tell me that is sinful. Like, what? Something is wrong here. Something is not true. It can't be that I'm seeing this, that I'm feeling this, and that I need to believe what you tell me.
Let me just interject here, because whenever I came into contact with that type of situation, it was easier to look at the extremes. Like, you look at someone who's maybe a bad person in the sense of morally bad in that structure, by maybe like being very, very promiscuous and all this things that I didn't accept in general. So looking at this person who's gay, it's like, oh, that's wrong. So it's easier to focus on that instead of the person. You're like, wait a second, this is actually a better person than me in a lot of ways. What?
Yeah, and then it's like, wait, are you lying to me?
So there's the two thoughts again.
Again, like the person that I trust the most in my life, are you telling me that this thing that I see as real, that I feel as real, that I experience as real, is not because you're saying so? My God, what else have you told me is not true? What else? Oh my God. And then you crumble. You crumble. It's very, very painful to be in that situation where you lost all places where you could hold to and feel secure. You lose your refuge. You lose your home. You lose your path.
Is it more common for people in that type of situation to maybe not go further with assessing the structure, but more crumbling internally?
Yes.
Is it because I would imagine that it's not like, well, this is wrong, so let me investigate all the other ones, but it's like that feeling of helplessness internalizes, and then that's the system crumbles, but inside.
Yeah, it's devastating. It's devastating. And people can't get over that.
Yeah.
It's very, very sad. And that's why I think what you do is so wonderful. Having this channel to let people know that they are not wrong, that they can, it's not fixed when they stop existing, that it's not true that they are the problem, that it is not true that killing themselves will be like saving anything around them. That's not the solution. We need to grow together. We need to move away from that, in which we still give ourselves permission to let others feel like they are the broken part of the system, or that they are threatening our world for being who they are. We can't coexist. And it's true, because we see a lot of religious communities now that welcome people to, like live the way they want it to be, but we're forbidden to do so in a much more I don't know how to call it, but it's a strict environment. We have seen that there's people that can even be priests in other communities where acceptance and respect for others is the main value, not only obedience of rules, for example.
Yeah, it seems like the community that I came from was seeing maybe the tendency of breaking free of the idea of structure. So it's like they buckled down on the obedience and everything, because like I said before, obedience for me is something that's part of the picture. It's not the driving force of who you are and what you should think, and it's not just that. But you see these people going from one extreme to another. So people who were in religion, they go through this process of having doubts and the system crumbles. Then you see them swing way over here in a totally different direction. And what I know these are big questions, I know, but just in general, what's the process of what's happening with somebody who does that, who goes from an apparent extreme to another?
Yeah, they are trying to save themselves. And if something needs to be rejected, and I can't be that, the thing that I reject can't be me, and sometimes it is me, and then the struggle ends with a suicide, for example. In this pendular movement.
Pendulum.
Okay, so they are right in this place where everything is, as we said, perfect, very well organized. There's nothing to be afraid of. Everything is warranted for you. You have a destiny, and you just have to do certain things, and everything will be fine. But then you are not welcome there. You are not part of that anymore. You, just by existing, you are wrong, not only for you, but for the community and for God. In order to survive, you need to go to the other extreme and say, the hell with them. The hell with all of that. It is all wrong. There's nothing I can, it was a lie. I was manipulated or brainwashed. None of those things were useful for my life. They were limiting me in every single aspect of my existence, and they were mean, and they were abusive, and they were treating me badly, and they let's do the exact same thing. They are all pederasts, they are abusing children, they are rapists, they are thieves, they are like, in order to survive, because if there's anything left of the love I had for that, I can't survive.
Oh, that's so interesting. Why is that? Why? Because for me, when I left, I don't know if this was just the way I was brought up, my education, I don't know what made up me to be who I am. But when I left, it wasn't, I never felt animosity towards religion. And I'm sure you recognize this in our sessions, that there were so many things that I still felt attracted to, in a sense. And it was more like I felt like not disappointed. I don't know what the word is. Like, maybe it is disappointed that it didn't work out or something like that. Like, that stinks that it did that. Like, it wasn't like you were just explaining. Like, I can't feel any sort of affection towards my past, because that means that there's something good in it.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
what?
But that's you and the strategy that worked for you. But for a lot of people, and I said that because you asked me, what happens with those people that are like, the hell with them, I hate them. Well, that they can't reconcile one thing with the other, because they recognize that they were not given that chance to take part of what they were and accept it, and just leave the other part to whatever that person is, They were rejected completely, so they reject everything back.
So you're saying because they weren't accepted, like there was nothing, like people weren't able to make a distinction, like separate things. They had to take it as 100% or zero. Then that's how their approach was. Do you think that it's because that's how they were taught to think, that it's kind of they have to go all the way in their
You
thinking?
said it's a matter of how you were brought up, and it's a combination of all the elements around you, and that's why some people will, say, "Well, I don't care, whatever, it's fine. If they don't want me, I don't want them. That's fine, I don't feel anything against them, But there will be people that say, "Oh, so I thought you were great. You think I'm the worst. Now I think you're the worst, and I am great, And or some other people will say, "No, you are mean to me, but you're not all that bad, and I can live my life. And it's fine." It will depend on all the other elements around in their lives, their
Right.
upbringing, but also their current situation, how that impacted their possibilities to continue to lead a life as they want to live it or not. It's a very complex situation that
of course.
takes you to take one or another strategy.
And like you said, the strategies depend on the person, and they're not rational necessarily.
Absolutely.
They're just like, I have this issue, I have to do something. And it's just like instinct almost, right?
Yeah, automatic. You just go there. And it's many times because of what you've done in the past too, and what worked for you. You resort to that same strategy. But a few minutes ago, you were talking about coping mechanisms, and that's a different thing. That's something else.
Okay.
Obviously, when someone is going through all these, they are feeling anxious, insecure, scared. We said that before, lost, afraid, stressed out. My God, sometimes depressed. They start developing these
check. Do you want to say more? But it's very physical, the consequences of that type of situation.
And there is where the coping mechanisms have a role, and they can be healthy or they can be very unhealthy. And when we think of unhealthy, we know, drinking, using drugs, engaging in dangerous activities, self-destructive behaviors, smoking like crazy, like all those things that we recognize, isolating ourselves. But there are some others that are kind of harder to recognize, like isolating yourself.
Isolation, this is something interesting because I know that that's my tendency to
very unhealthy.
Well, it's my tendency because I did that so much in the past. Being alone was like the normal state, you and God, but now it's not God, it's just me. But I still have that tendency of shutting down to try to fix myself, and then I'll open up again.
Thank God.
Yeah, but that's dangerous because it seems like, oh, this is a good idea because I don't want to hurt anyone. I don't want to affect anyone else.
No, that's what I was saying. It might not be drugs or, like eating disorder or like drinking or like partying like an animal, like crazy, but it's really dangerous. As well as, for example, fatalism. Thinking that this that happened to you is unique to your experience and is the worst thing that could have possibly happened to you.
I hope that these videos that I make, even if it's just 10 years from now when I've gone on with something else in my life, people who need to hear that there's other people that are like them are able to come across these videos and whatever else I do, because that's one thing that was devastating for me in that situation, because I've come to learn after that there were other priests, not at the same time that I know of, but in the past before me, who had had similar situations, and they never told me. They never put my situation in context, and so having that fatalism, like you said, was I think for me there were some those bad things, like I smoked and those type of things that kind of get out of my situation. But I think the more subtle ones, the more dangerous ones, maybe even in some sense, those were the things that were really, really getting me down.
Absolutely. There's this other one that is very common, which is like romanticizing the past. Because
oh, that's
when
interesting.
because when you break away from what held you like structured and made you think of you as this superior person, you will have problems. You will encounter some very, very hard challenges. Life will continue to be harsh. It's not like you make this big decision after all this struggle and then everything will be beautiful and perfect.
No, that was the easy part.
That was the easy part.
Yeah.
Indeed. Yeah. So there's another tendency to think, oh God, everything was better before. This must have been the worst mistake I ever made,
Yeah.
This
and
nostalgia,
It's because when you say that, there's that does happen, but there must be situations where it was better in the past.
Yes, that's true.
There has to be those type of, because it's not always you're in a better situation now.
Absolutely. And you are so right about that. It's not only your imagination, but the fact that there were things that were really easier. Like, for example, you didn't have to worry about the kinds of clothes that you will wear. This is silly and stupid and very simple, but it was, given. It was easy. You didn't have to think about it at all. And it wasn't hurtful in any way to you. So now when you are in this other side and you have to, like work even to get money, to pay for clothes, to get a style, to choose all those things. It's like, man, it's not bad, it's not like extremely complicated. It's not a life or death situation, but it was easier. It was easier when you had, company guaranteed forever, It's even hard to leave a job where you're miserable thinking, well, but, I have Social Security and I have, like maybe a secure payment every other week. And, well, imagine when it is something that is this deep, it's even harder. But we tend to use these coping mechanisms that are very, very unhealthy and that really won't help us advance very quickly to the place that we want to get, more peaceful, more healthy life.
I'm sure that you would suggest that people who are going through these type of situations, that there are people out there to help them, because this is a big journey that they're going on in their life. And sometimes we think, I can do this on my own. And it's important to reach out to professionals or to people that you trust in your life in order to help give support in those type of situations.
And I love how you started this conversation by saying, I reached the point where I knew I wasn't going to do it anymore, because we all have coping mechanisms. We blast music in our room, or we go exercise, or we, I don't know, pet our cat or something to feel a little better when we're dealing with mild stress. But there's a list of stressful situations that are very, very difficult to deal with when you are on your own. losing a child, being fired, a divorce, changing your path, um, coming out as a person that is part of the LGBT community, for example, to name a few, that won't be alleviated by petting your cat,
Right, exactly.
or watching Netflix, and or I don't know, like I'm naming those because those are like healthy coping mechanisms. But reaching out, not necessarily for a psychologist if you don't want to, but to someone else that you can trust, that you can validate your feelings, that you can discuss the things that are going on in your life, and you want to get perspective. And you, if you respect that person, if you feel that they have your best interests at heart, then it's a great option. It's a great alternative to open up and share. Uh, Ground yourself, recognize that you are not the problem. The problem is always outside, and it has a way to be solved.
What
Always.
what do you, because a lot of people from my the past community that I was a part of, they were very skeptical of um, psychologists, of psychiatry in general, because it's very, in their mind, it's based on a lot of modern philosophies that don't coincide with Christian principles. And which I've studied extensively. Actually, it's funny. I think that I've had a really good basis for studying psychology. Maybe that's what I should go into. But
Yes, please.
but there was the skepticism, and even when months before I left, I was asking for help, for therapy, because I knew that the priest couldn't give me anything. I knew that it wasn't a problem with religion or spirituality. It wasn't a spiritual problem. It was something psychological that I needed to look at. And they didn't get it. They didn't get a psychologist for me. Even before, people were very skeptical. And in their minds, they thought, I need to have a Catholic psychologist, because they're afraid that psychologists are going to infiltrate their minds and manipulate them, and confirm them in the evil that they think they should do, and all this stuff. What would you say? Because a lot of people, their skepticism isn't malicious. They just have this environment around them that tells them that. So they kind of just have this, they're uneasy. So what would you say to people like that?
I understand. I understand that one might be feeling like distrustful, like why will that person be worthy of my trust or my confidence?
God's not behind them, like a priest.
Yeah, exactly. They're not representing anybody bigger than themselves on earth, right? I also understand why it's like so important to keep people away from psychologists or professionals of mental health, because our job is to validate who you are and what you want in your life, not to indoctrinate you and to tell you to go in this direction or the other. Like, what's to gain for us in you being this or that? That's not our job. But we won't judge you. And that is one of the main weapons, of these institutions, to be able to judge you and for you to believe that judgment is true. And we will walk with you side by side.
What they say is a Catholic psychologist will confirm you in the beliefs that you have. So it, like I said before, everything makes sense when you're inside the structure. So it's like the psychologist is going to use who you are in order to understand your problems. But the psychologist that's not a part of, affiliated with religion, they're going to take you away from religion. But
Yeah,
that's not the purpose of the psychologist isn't to tell you what to do.
never, never. If a psychologist tells you what to do, it's not good. Run away in the other direction. You should not be there. Um, that's not a professional of mental health. The idea of someone being able to manipulate you and to make you do this or that comes from an ideology that takes away the agency of people. Meaning, I believe someone very easily can sway you in one direction or the other because you, as a person, you don't have a real compass. We need to give it to you. And obviously, that's the mindset of someone that is a compass, that claims to be the compass. But we know, psychologists know, that we are not the compass of anything. We're just companions. We will be there for you to discuss what's going on, what's your human experience. And that's valid. And we know that it's valid, you know?
It's like having someone who's there that's very like almost like a soundboard, but that gives you what you're thinking back at you in different angles so that you know how to approach what you're thinking
And explore it.
and explore it exactly, and maybe see things from an angle that
Exactly. Explore it freely, freely, without holding you to, no, 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 no. That you can't go there. That is not something you can think of, because exactly that's what got you into that mess in the first place. Believing that you are wrong for thinking what you think, feeling what you feel, or being who you are. You need to explore that, learn from it, like really dive into it and see, what is it? How is this really incompatible with the rest of my life? Or how can I actually merge things that are good for me, regardless of what other people that are telling me I'm the problem might think? Can we solve these somehow?
yeah, what's the importance, because we were talking about that pendulum going
Mm-hmm.
from one extreme to another. I would you say that being on the other extreme is a healthy place to stay?
No, 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 please,
Right.
no, don't.
So exactly, but it's a normal human reaction that happens to some
And
people.
yeah, not for everyone, but
Not
yes,
for
some
everyone,
people
but
go
it does
there.
happen, and it's not something that really is moral. It's just an instinct almost.
That's how it is.
Right.
And because if you think of a pendulum, it goes first to the very, very, very extreme side and then to the other one. But if it's working, it will continue to go like this
Mm-hmm.
until it finds its center.
How important is it to go through the past? And a lot of I've noticed that I would love to just keep you forever and then be able to ask you all these questions, because there's an obsession now on blaming your past for your present problems and
How
putting all the
comfortable.
blame on your parents and your ancestors and they obsessed with the past, and it almost removes their agency in the present. And it's
And
very interesting. It's so interesting to see all the movements of thought that happen in the
yeah,
world. But how important is it to go into the past, especially, for me and for other people who have left religion, to go back, not to point the finger, not to condemn it and to see more reasons why you should hate it to confirm yourself in your present, but to find yourself almost.
yeah. Well, it's part of the exploration, right? That will make us free to understand what's going on. It's very common to hear these, life is not what happens to us. Life is what we do with what happens to us, right?
Mhm.
And I totally see what you're saying, that people very, very frequently say, well, but this is the way they taught me. My mom was very cold, or my dad was unavailable. And obviously that
So that's
explains
why I'm an
everything.
asshole right now to you.
There you go.
Like, wait a second.
I don't know. Yeah, it's a way of not taking responsibility of who we are now. That is true to a point. You were given what you were given, but till you were like 8, you didn't have any other option. After that, you did, my dear, and you started choosing and picking ways to react to things. And by the time that you're 20 or 30 or 40 or 50, oh my God, that won't fly. My dad was absent. Okay, my mom was abusive already. When you were 6, when you were 14, I mean, I'm very sorry. That shouldn't have happened to you.
And it
I'm
does
very
affect
sorry.
you. It does have some
Absolutely.
sort of effect on you,
Yeah.
but it's not the excuse. It's not the full picture.
Let's do something about it. Right?
Right.
If it's that bad, if it affected you so much, let's get your hands dirty, and let's start putting things in their rightful place. If it's not working for you, if what you feel about yourself, if what they made you believe about yourself, if the limitations that they put on you are not good for your life now, do something, pal. Get involved. It's your life.
Do you think that people who maintain this animosity towards religion and all the members based upon their own past experiences, do you think that, how do I put this? It's a way for them to justify their decision in order to make their decision good in a objective way, not just subjective, but in an objective way. They have to throw the blame on everyone else and condemn everyone else, even if you weren't a part of their particular story.
I see what you're saying. I just wish people could live in such a safe environment that they didn't have to justify what they do in the eyes of anybody else.
Well, most of the time they have to do it to themselves
above
everyone else.
Yes, you're absolutely true. You're absolutely right, I'm sorry. And in that regard, I think it's very important that we try to find equilibrium and that we try to regain balance by not denying who we were, what we believe, what we love, what we defended. Would we try to find the values that were important to us at that point in our lives, and see if it's something that still applies to us in this life that we now chose to live freely? Do we need those values? Were those good for you? Good in the sense of, did they bring you peace? Were you more calm? Were you in a place where you feel tranquility? Wasn't that nice? Wouldn't you like to have that again? It wasn't about the structure. It was about what you valued, and you can value that in your life now.
I see that, and that's what I did when I was going through, and it's not like I've looked at every single aspect of my belief system before. It's only when I come face to face with a situation now that I approach it and I'm like, all right, let's talk about this. Let's think about this. But for me, where I find the most peace is when I can see in something, like I can put my 2 feet on the ground and understand that this does not depend on religion. It's not necessarily applicable here or here or here or here, but this is something that I would believe no matter what situation I was in. And having that security, that foundation, that helps me with sifting through things. It's not like, well, do I believe it now? Like, it's not so much like that, but it's like, okay, let's talk about abortion. Okay, let's look at that. What did I believe before? What do I believe now? Well, I don't know what I believe now. Let's talk about it. But I look at facts, scientific facts, and it's not so much of, I have to believe the opposite now because I'm not religious. And that's the only reason why I'm not going to believe in it. But it's like, no, I want to take a position that it doesn't depend on the circumstance that I'm in, but I would always take that position, at least now in this present time. But that's how I'm approaching it, not just anti-religion or I'm against it now, or you know what I mean?
Yeah. Because then you are faced with the question of, are you moral or immoral? Who wants to be moral? Right? Like, are you a good person or a bad person? Who wants to be a bad person? And it's about, I think, being ethical too. Learning to see things the way they are in the circumstances that they are happening, considering the social, political, cultural situation, and then saying, oh, I think it could go in this direction or another, rather than a monolithical answer. Never, always, everyone, nobody. Like, what? The world is not the same for everyone. We don't all, right? We don't all experience life in the same way. And that's beautiful. That's perfectly fine.
Yeah, like I said, I could go down a million rabbit holes here because just the idea of morality is something that I've been struggling with. Not struggling in the sense of every day I'm thinking about it, but it's when I want to have a talk about something, when I want to make a video about something, I think about it first. Of course, I plan it and I imagine what would I have said before. I always think like this. I'm still very close to my past in a lot of ways. I think just from my content and what I'm doing. So I still am very familiar with Francis from before. There aren't many differences, but I'm very aware of that, and I see all the sides of an issue, and it's so interesting for me to try to grasp onto something now.
Yeah.
And morality or whatever it is, it's like what's my perspective now?
Right. And you know what? I think that something that we can gain out of having gone through all this pain and this struggle is the certainty that we are always learning. Always.
Yes. I always try to tell people that just because you were so sure before doesn't mean that you have to have that same surety now. Like maybe for like the last little section, I don't want to take up all your day, but the last little section, which fits right perfectly into this, how easy is it for somebody who leaves a very strict or just some sort of strict structure to fall out of it and go right into another one? Like is it easier because of the perspective and maybe that security inside of a structure? When you leave it, you're almost like yearning to give yourself again to another sort of structure.
Right. I get it now. Well, obviously, when you are used to having a structure in your life, not having it is threatening all the time. Think of this as an example. You learn how to drive with a GPS in front of you in Guadalajara, if you want. And all of a sudden you think or you realize it's important for you to learn how to navigate the world without a GPS. So you throw it out of the window and you start thinking, okay, so how am I going to get to, I don't know, Fashion Mall or whatever, whatever. And you won't know. You won't
And
know.
it's funny because everyone's so dependent on technology now that I'm sure everyone, I mean,
Can't
how many
relate to
people
that.
know their own phone number?
Right, right.
You're right.
But
You're
then
right.
you could start thinking, oh, I'll buy a map, or I will have a co-pilot. I will ask people directions in the street. You can't trust your instinct of just, I'll take that road. It looks like it could be the one. That is not going to happen. You will need to find something to help you navigate to this other structure. And the interesting thing here is that if you had a GPS for the longest time and you didn't know how to go from A to B without it, but then you really get rid of that. And you are like, oh, I'm up. You will realize that you still don't know how to navigate. So you will fold the map and put it away and ask someone for directions in the street. But the more you practice, the more you will learn to trust yourself to go from point A to point B. And you will learn that that you're capable of doing it. But at the beginning, it's very hard.
One thing that I try to be very balanced in my opinions with especially things about religion or other political movements, because I see some political movements that objectively are not wrong, but the people that are involved in them are very toxic. They're the ones who go way too far. It's not the principles of the movement. And so I don't want to just say, we shouldn't have any sort of ideological system in our lives, because if we didn't have anything, then where would we go? What would we do? What step would we make in whatever direction,
Yeah. Well, anarchists say that it really isn't that chaotic when you take away ideology or institutions, that people know how to regulate themselves in a community when they learn values that they can share with others. But that is like the foundation of it. You need to have shared values in order to move forward as a group, right? That's what they say. I don't know. I haven't seen it, right?
It's very good to make these very theoretical hypotheses, right?
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, but that's what they say.
Well, probably this is what would happen if everyone stopped going to being associated with religion or political, any sort of ideological movement today, then probably the next few generations would be okay, right? Because there's still the echo of their past that's influencing their life. But I imagine that in order to have a shared value system, that has to be the ideological system.
Well,
right?
they say that religious institutions came to be in order to teach people what was right and what was wrong, because people didn't know. We were like savages and we were doing very crazy things, So in order to establish some kind of order, well, anyway, to establish,
I know what you mean.
Yeah. So the idea was to teach people this is right and this is wrong. But it was very difficult to convince people of what is right and what is wrong just because I say so. So they will resort to, well, there's someone bigger than us that created everything, that says this is good, and if you do it, you will be rewarded, and this is wrong, and if you do it, you will be punished. And there's hell, and there's heaven, and there's angels, and there's demons, and all these structures started to get like, whoa, very complex, right? But they say that when that wasn't needed anymore, or when we started to see the flaws of this system with like a critical thought process, looking at the Inquisition, for example, it's like, whoa, there are quite some big inconsistencies here, no? So we need to be critical of this. And that helped us see the good and the bad in that too. So we're moving away from this very archaic way of looking to what is good and what is bad, only because someone said it should be done like that, because the world has changed. The world has evolved. We have created the situations, the circumstances for people to very easily, readily, actually, after they start decoding language and being acculturated, when we learn what a society is very quickly when we are little, we start recognizing what's convenient and inconvenient to sustain life. So it's not about what God would like things to be like according to a Catholic priest or Muslim religion or but according to the community that you live in, with the people that you relate to, very closely to you.
Do you know, one of the wonderful things that I like about how you talk and how you introduce ideas is that you always refer to, this is a possible thought system. This is also another thing that people say. You're not saying, I say this, I think this, but you're always referring to, here's a possibility, here's a possibility. And I think that's a good way for all of us to approach a certain topic, a subject in our head, a thought process. It's not to go resort right to I, but look at different sources, investigate, and see which one conforms most to who we are.
Yeah, and that means we need to care for others too, right? Not only about ourselves and our point of view.
Yeah, that's true.
Care.
And it takes honesty, because you really have to be looking for the truth and not just looking for something that, I want it to be this, so I'm going to, but really like, what's really going on here? And I'm going to look at different opinions of people who probably know more than me. So I think, I just wanted to, because as you were talking, I thought, this is how you talk during, even in the therapy sessions, that very, well, think of this possibility. Think of this way of, it's not, well, this is what it is.
Yeah.
But more introducing.
I think that if we have choices, then we can act freely.
Yeah. Yeah, especially someone who's an adult and supposedly rational. I try to be. But you think that if someone has a list of options, they'll see which one is probably the best.
Yeah. But many times we just think of the way that is convenient to us, This is the most convenient thing for me to say out loud, even if I believe other things or doubt about this or that. We sometimes don't put it out there because it makes us vulnerable. And we want to be deemed as smart or intelligent. And if we say, well, I really don't know, but I know this and that and that and that, and these people, some people do it like this, and some people do it like that, and some people do it like that, and it's our choice. We can, even experiment and say, well, I've done this. Let me try and do this, and let me try and do that, and then I will be able to say, oh, this is
for sure,
for
not
and
that.
The people, not that. But for me and for people that are around me and that I care for, I'm being careful with others and careful with myself.
Yeah. I think that's the healthiest way to approach anything. Even if someone decides to be a part of a religious structure, a religious organization, it's, even though there's hypothetically a choice, when you really do decide to do it, I'm thinking of myself, there was a moment when I got older that I really did decide to do it. It wasn't just, oh, I'm going to half-ass this. I'm going to go to mass on Sundays and pretend to be a Catholic. But I was like, no, if I believe this is true, I'm going to do it. And when you really have that honesty and you really go into something, you're going to find out if that's really for you or not.
Mm-hmm.
So it's good to be honest with yourself and to really act according to what you believe. Don't try to pretend. Don't try to, this person's doing that person, but really just say, no, like this is me. And like, I would naturally do this if no one was looking.
Yeah. And find your tribe, that's very important. You are not alone in the world. You said it, dear Francis. There's this always this tension between being an individual and being in a community. But when you are part of that community that respects you, loves you, cherishes who you are, values your presence, your gifts, what you have to offer, you're at the right place. And you have to do that for the others too. Because when you are part of this group of people and you feel that you belong, you will be at peace, and nothing will be out of reach for you. So keep that in mind. There will always be other people that have gone through what you have gone through, and that will be willing to accept you, love you, and respect you for who you are.
Yeah. I that's what I hope with this channel, that it's just another little, even though it's not physical community, but it's just a little place to go where that there's people here who have been through similar experiences. So
thank you, Francis. Thank you for doing this. I really believe that this is very, very helpful, because sometimes when you are in that very deep hole where everything is dark, where you have lost faith, but also hope, this might be the light that might help you come back and trust that you are not a waste of time, that you are not mistaken, or like the problem of anybody. You're worth it, and you will be welcomed in another environment.
Put and yourself, sometimes that's all it is, right? It's just looking and seeing that there's another path that's available to you.
Choose life. Choose to live, and be patient. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to happen overnight. Francis here can attest to that. And it will be very hard before it gets easier, but it will get easier, and it will be a nice thing to do, to wake up every day and continue to learn and continue to explore and know that you can serve others. And that is something that you, Francis, have always wanted to do, and I think you're doing it. I'm very, very happy that you found this way of putting your experience at the service of others, because I think it's doing it, and it will continue to do it for a long time.
Yeah, I hope so. I'm happy that this option's available, and that I was brave enough to to jump into it, because it's not easy to just put yourself out there. But it's worth it. It's worth it when you look at the messages. I could send you the messages, but it's just amazing. Don't worry, anybody. I'm not going to send the messages, but there's a lot of messages of people who just privately come to me and say, "Listen, this is happening. You got me out of a really tough time," and all of that. So,
bravo.
but I appreciate having the opportunity also to give you and others that I've had on an opportunity to speak to and to reach people that they wouldn't normally be able to reach, and give another perspective, another thought while people are maybe going through a tough time. So I
Thank you.
appreciate it. Thank you.
I'm honored. I'm honored to be here with you. I'm honored to meet you, to know you, to call you my friend.
I feel the same way. 100%, 100% the same way.
Good.
So thank you again. And maybe we'll have a part 2 in the future.
I'll be glad.
Okay, good. Thank you, everyone.